Hello again. In this third clip, we will have a closer look at where we are with respect to becoming a green European economy. The Climate and Energy Package adopted in 2009 introduced the famous 20-20-20 targets, namely a 20% reduction in EU greenhouse gas emissions below 1990 levels, a 20% reduction in primary energy use, and a 20% share of renewables in total energy consumption, all to be achieved by 2020. The Renewables Directive establishes binding national targets for the share of renewables, and these targets range between more or less 10% for Malta and Luxembourg and 30 to even 50% in other countries that have a higher potential, like Latvia, Denmark, or Sweden. Where are we today? Well, in the EU as a whole, gas and coal still dominate the power sector, but renewable energy sources already account for about 40% of all installed capacities. And here we have a quite high share of hydro energy, but also substantial capacities coming from wind and solar energy. When it comes to electricity generation, about 20% of all electricity is generated based on renewable sources, but the shares in the energy mix differ quite widely in the different member states, as you can see in this figure. They are quite low in Poland or in the UK, for example, but they are very high in the Nordic countries and also in Spain and Portugal. In March 2013, the European Commission published its first Renewable Energy Progress Report, and this report has quite positive conclusions, and it also shows that since the adoption of the Renewables Directive, most member states experienced substantial growth in renewable energy consumption. When it comes to the details, however, you see that wind energy, and here especially offshore wind, might fall short of expectations because of difficulties related to the associated infrastructure investments. So, where do we plan to go? Well, the technology paths to 2020 are basically known, but they are quasi unknown for the longer term future. We have different technologies that can contribute to decarbonisation. So on the one hand, we have all the consumption-oriented measures, including increases in energy efficiency and energy savings. And on the other hand, we have the production technologies, including, of course, renewables, but also nuclear or the decarbonisation of fossil fuels. Different studies show scenarios for decarbonization towards 2050, and here, very prominently, the European Commission published its Energy Roadmap 2050 with different scenarios for this decarbonization. A selected number of these scenarios you also see in this table. The diversified technologies scenario assumes that carbon pricing is the key support instrument, and as a result, the energy mix in 2050 will include renewables, of course, but also quite high shares of nuclear and decarbonized fossil fuels. The high energy efficiency scenario assumes that we would achieve quite high energy savings, and it also builds on much stronger political commitment to improvements in energy efficiency. The high renewable case assumes a very strong political support to different renewable technologies. And finally, the low nuclear scenario assumes that some nuclear power plants would be shut down earlier and no new nuclear capacities would be built. When having a look at the share of renewables in these different scenarios, you see that it might be quite high, so it might well go up to 70 or maybe even 80%. And other studies found actually quite similar results. The International Energy Agency, for instance, also sees renewable shares of up to 60 or 70% in the energy mix of 2050. So let me conclude this first module of the training course. Renewables are a whole class of very different technologies with very particular characteristics distinguishing them from conventional generators. The technical potential of renewables does not limit their increased use, but the economic potential, which is a subset of this technical potential, is restricted by the economics of different generation resources. We saw that substantial cost decreases could be achieved, but still renewables rely on public support for their development and deployment to a quite large extent. Renewables cannot be regarded as passive units in the power system anymore, but the key objective today is to facilitate their efficient integration at low cost, and at the same time also to ensure, of course, system security and the reliability of electricity supplies.